The smell of roasted turkey filled the house as George Mason hummed softly in his kitchen. It was Thanksgiving Day, and the golden bird had just gone into the oven at 11:30, right on time. Butter and sage danced in the air, warm and familiar after 40 years of perfect dinners. Outside, the Seattle rain painted silver lines down the window. Everything felt peaceful, until the doorbell rang 2 hours early. He wiped his hands on the towel, wondering who would come before the guests were due. Through the frosted glass, he saw 2 shadows waiting. His daughter Emma and her husband Mark. "Surprise! We came early to help," Emma said with a bright smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Mark followed, holding a bottle of wine like it was part of the act. "You didn't have to," George said, forcing a smile as he took their coats. "Oh, we'll keep them on," she replied quickly, glancing at her husband. "It's a little chilly, don't you think?" The house wasn't cold. He always kept the thermostat steady at 72. Something in her voice made him pause, but he said nothing, stepping aside as they moved in like they already owned the place. Mark gave him a long handshake, the kind that tried too hard. "Mind if I use the restroom upstairs? That drive from Queen and hit me hard," he said. "Sure, you know where it is," George answered. As Mark climbed the stairs, Emma hovered near the kitchen island, picking up spoons, shifting bowls, pretending to help. "So, Dad, how long do you roast a turkey this size?" she asked too cheerfully. 3.5 hours, he replied. "And you're still doing stuffing inside. Isn't that risky?" Her words came fast, nervous. Above them, the floorboards creaked where no bathroom was. George's hand froze on the carving knife. The footsteps overhead weren't in the restroom. They were in the hallway. Then came the sound of a closet door opening, closing. Emma kept talking, her chatter covering the noise. "You really should try my cranberry sauce recipe. It's easier than yours." Her voice trembled. "I need to get the tablecloth from upstairs," he said, his tone calm. He moved quietly, each stair complaining softly beneath his feet. Near the landing, Mark's voice drifted down, low but clear, every word slicing through George's chest like glass. 3 bedrooms. Huge basement. It's perfect." George stopped halfway up the stairs. "Plenty of space for your workshop, Dad. We'll move in once the old man's settled." "He has no clue," Mark said with a laugh that made George's stomach twist. Another voice, Mark's father, cheerful, greedy, answered. "And that nursing home's cheap. $3,200 a month. Once we're not paying rent, we'll be fine." The world tilted. His knuckles turned white around the rail. The house he'd built with his late wife, the one filled with every memory, was being divided like spoils in a war he didn't know he was fighting. George stood frozen for a long moment, the old wood of the stairs creaking softly beneath his weight. His breath came slow and shallow, as if his body feared to draw attention. The voices upstairs carried on, planning his future like he wasn't alive to hear it. "We'll redo the kitchen first," Mark said. "Emma's dad already paid off the mortgage. All we have to do is move in." A sickening calm settled over George. Every word pressed deeper until rage and heartbreak met somewhere cold inside him. Then he turned silently, stepping down each stair without a sound. Back in the kitchen, Emma was holding one of the wine glasses up to the light. Her nervous smile stretched too wide. "Find what you needed?" she asked, pretending not to notice the tightness around his eyes. "Changed my mind," he said flatly. "Table's fine as it is." "You look pale, Dad. Are you feeling all right?" she asked softly. "Just the heat," he replied. A few minutes later, Mark came downstairs like nothing had happened. "Great place, George," he said, settling into the chair like a king taking his throne. "This house must be worth a fortune by now." Dinner was a quiet performance. Emma called him Dad with rehearsed warmth, her hand resting on his arm too often. Mark praised the crown molding, the new windows, the way the light fell across the dining table. "Ever think about simplifying?" he asked casually, cutting his turkey. "A smaller place, less to maintain. There are great communities for seniors." Haven't thought about it, George said, his face unreadable. Emma smiled sweetly. We just worry about you being alone in this big house. He nodded slowly, watching them both like an architect studying a collapsing structure. When they finally left that evening, the door closed behind them with a soft click that echoed too loudly. George stood in the hallway, listening to their car pull away. He walked through each room they had inspected earlier, the living room, the master bedroom, the basement. He could almost see their plans hovering in the air. New furniture, Mark's parents unpacking boxes, Emma rearranging everything Marie once touched. The turkey carcass still sat on the table, half carved and abandoned. Outside, the rain came harder, streaking the windows as if the night itself grieved with him. He didn't sleep. The clock glowed through the dark as he sat at the kitchen table, staring at nothing. His coffee had gone cold hours ago, but his thoughts burned hotter with every replay of Mark's laughter. The old man has no clue. Oh, but he did now. He remembered raising Emma alone after her mother's death, every bill paid, every sacrifice made. He remembered signing the last mortgage check with pride. By morning, the grief had hardened into something sharper. George Mason wasn't done, not by a long shot. They wanted his house. They'd soon regret it. By Friday afternoon, Emma called like clockwork. Her voice carried that polished sweetness that always meant trouble. Hey Dad, just checking on you. You sounded tired on Thanksgiving. George stirred his coffee, watching steam curl into the morning light. I'm fine, he said evenly. Are the stairs getting harder for you? I noticed you moving slower. They're fine, Emma, he replied. She laughed softly, a sound rehearsed. We just worry, that's all. The call ended, but her tone lingered like a fingerprint on glass. He knew this wasn't care. It was preparation. The calls became a pattern. Sunday night. Another one. Dad, have you thought about retirement homes? They're not like they used to be. Some are really nice, she said. Tuesday again. A friend's father moved into one and loves it. Each conversation was gentle, predictable, and hollow. George answered with vague replies, giving her nothing. I'll think about it. Maybe, he'd say. She was building the script carefully, waiting for him to nod at the right line. He didn't. Instead, he began his own quiet research. He drove to the public library on Market Street, the one where nobody knew his family name. In the back corner, under the buzz of old lights, he opened a computer and typed, Washington State Property Law. His fingers moved slow but steady, eyes sharp. For 3 days he filled his notebook with notes, ownership rights, eviction processes, sales regulations. He learned that as sole owner, he could sell the house any time. No signatures, no permissions, no warnings. The thought made him smile for the first time since Thanksgiving. They thought he was clueless. He was just quiet. When he met with a lawyer, a gray-haired man named David Rhodes, the office smelled faintly of lemon polish and certainty. So, David said, adjusting his glasses, you're asking if you can sell your house without your daughter's consent? That's right. She's not on the title. No, the lawyer smiled faintly. Then you have every right, Mr. Mason. They can't stop you. They can't even slow you down. George leaned back, feeling something long dormant settle in his chest. Control. Real solid and legal. Good, he said quietly. Then let's make a plan. That night, George spread out graph paper across his dining table. Old habits of an architect returned easily. The neat lines, the boxes, the arrows. At the top he wrote, Project, Freedom. Each stage had a purpose. Phase 1, play weak, let them believe they're winning. Phase 2, prepare quietly, find a buyer. Phase 3, sell fast. Phase 4, serve notice. Phase 5, disappear. He drew arrows, added timelines, double-checked everything. The blueprint of revenge stood before him, clean and flawless. You wanted my house, he whispered. Let's see how you handle losing it. December came with steady rain and Christmas lights glowing through fog. George began setting his stage. Mail piled on the counter. Few bills left unopened. The tree stayed in its box, and he left only one strand of lights hanging across the mantel, crooked and dim. The image was perfect, a lonely old man slipping away from order. When Emma and Mark visited on Christmas Day, he made sure to move slower, pausing halfway up the stairs. "Dad, let me get that," Emma said, rushing over. "These stairs are getting dangerous for you." Dinner that day was another performance. George let his voice trail off mid-sentence. "What was I saying again?" "The roast, Dad," Emma replied gently, hiding her smile. "You were talking about the cooking time." "Ah, right." He rubbed his lower back, sighing softly as he stood. "Getting old, I guess." Mark's hand brushed Emma's under the table. Silent triumph. During dessert, George mentioned, "The furnace made a strange noise last week. Cost $400 just to get it checked." Emma glanced at her husband, her expression almost victorious. They thought his decline was real. "We've been thinking," Mark began casually, leaning back in his chair. "Maybe it's time to consider your options, George. You deserve a simpler life. No stairs, no worries." Emma reached for his hand. "We just want you safe, Dad. It's hard keeping up with a house this size." George let silence hang between them, then nodded slowly, pretending to agree. "You might be right. Maybe it's time." Their faces lit up like Christmas lights. "We'll help with everything," Emma said warmly. "Of course you will," he replied, his smile unreadable. January brought gray skies and a sharper focus. George met a real estate agent named Mary Chen in a quiet coffee shop. She was efficient, polite, and didn't ask personal questions. "You mentioned you need privacy," she said, flipping through her tablet. "Yes," George replied. "My family can't know about this yet." She nodded. "Understood. A craftsman house in Ballard with upgrades like yours could go for $850, maybe more. I already know a few cash buyers." He signed the preliminary paperwork right there, the plan moving from paper to reality. Over the next 3 weeks, George made quiet trips to a storage unit in Georgetown. He carried boxes of photographs, important papers, and his late wife's keepsakes, things that couldn't be replaced. He sold old furniture online under a different name, telling buyers he was downsizing. Each sale felt like lifting a stone off his chest. The house grew emptier, lighter, almost ready for its next act. Standing in the quiet living room one evening, George whispered to himself, "Let them dream. Let them pack. By the time they unpack, it'll be gone." By late January, George returned to David Rhodes's office carrying the sale documents Mary had prepared. The lawyer reviewed every line carefully, his pen tapping the desk as he read. "Everything's clean," David said finally. "As sole owner, you control it all. Once the sale closes, anyone living there must leave within 30 days. George nodded. "And if they refuse? Then you file for eviction. Sheriff handles the rest. They have no claim to stop you." The older man smiled faintly. "You have all the power here, Mr. Mason." George left the office feeling lighter than he had in years. That evening, he walked through his half-empty house and felt no sorrow, only purpose. Every room once filled with memories now felt like a chessboard where every piece was in place. He made himself a simple dinner of rice and grilled chicken, ate at the same table where he had written his revenge plan. Outside, rain tapped gently on the windows, steady and soothing. His phone buzzed. Emma's name glowed on the screen. "Hey, Dad," she said sweetly. "Just checking in." He smiled to himself. "I'm tired, but I'm fine." "We'll stop by tomorrow," she said. "I have something to show you." The next morning, Emma arrived with a glossy brochure. The front read Sunrise Meadows Senior Living in cheerful gold letters. "A friend told me about this place," she said brightly, sliding it across the table. "It's clean, affordable, and close to us." George flipped through photos of smiling seniors playing cards under fake sunlight. The monthly cost printed at the bottom matched the number he'd overheard on Thanksgiving, 3,200. Looks nice, he said calmly. Would you like to visit just to see it? She asked. No commitment, Dad. Just looking. He nodded slowly. Why not? The following Tuesday, Mark drove them to the facility. Emma sat in the passenger seat, talking about amenities and independence. George sat in the back, silent, watching the world pass through the window. Sunrise Meadows looked pleasant enough. Fresh paint, trimmed hedges, bright smiles hiding institutional air. A staff member named Patricia gave them a tour, her tone too cheerful. 3 meals a day, activities, medical staff, she said. George nodded politely, asking the right questions. In the common room, an old woman whispered to him, "Don't come here unless you must. You lose yourself." He smiled faintly. He wasn't planning to. After the tour, they drove home in silence. So, what do you think? Emma asked eagerly. It's adequate, George said. I'll think about it. That was all she needed. Her relief was obvious. You'll love it, Dad. Less stress, more company. Mark added. And we'll take care of the house for you, no problem. He watched them from the rearview mirror, their faces glowing with victory. When they dropped him off, he saw their excitement as they drove away, probably already making plans for furniture placement. He closed his door, exhaled and whispered, "Good. Keep believing it." 2 days later, his neighbor, Tom, stopped by looking uneasy. "George, something odd happened," he said. "I saw your son-in-law here with 2 older people. They had keys and went inside while you were out. What were they doing?" George asked calmly. "Measuring rooms, taking pictures. Looked like they were planning a move." George thanked him, closed the door and checked the kitchen drawer. His spare key was still there, but he remembered Mark borrowing it last spring, just in case. Plenty of time to make a copy. He laughed softly, bitterly. "They think I'm already gone." That night, George walked through his home in silence, picturing Mark's parents arguing about where to put their couch, measuring walls, planning his erasure. Every inch of the house, the creak in the stairs, the dent in the hallway wall, the smell of cedar from the attic, was his life, and they wanted to strip it bare. His phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "So proud of you for being open-minded today, Dad. This is a good thing. Love you." He deleted it without replying, turned off the lights, and let the darkness swallow the room. A week later he called Emma. His voice sounded tired, carefully aged. "I've been thinking," he said. "Maybe it's time I moved to that place." Silence followed, then a rush of excitement. "Really, Dad? Are you sure?" "I'm sure." "Oh, Dad, you'll love it there." She tried to sound emotional, but the relief in her voice gave her away. "Let's meet for lunch tomorrow," she said. "We can discuss details." "Bring Mark," he said. "I want to hear his thoughts." When he ended the call, George smiled faintly. The trap was closing and they were stepping right in. The restaurant they chose was cheerful and neutral, bright booths and laminated menus. Mark and Emma arrived early, their folder already on the table. "Dad," Emma said warmly, "we're so glad you're doing this." Mark slid the papers toward him. "It's just a temporary residence agreement," he explained smoothly. "We'll maintain the house while you're away. Keep it safe. Handle repairs." George scanned the document, reading every line. The language sounded official but meant nothing. "Sounds good," he said, pretending to hesitate. Then he signed, his hand trembling slightly. "Thank you both," he murmured. "You're doing me a favor." That evening, far across town, Mark's parents celebrated. "Finally," his father said, scribbling notes on a pad. "We'll refinish the floors, redo the kitchen. That house will be perfect." His mother chatted on the phone, bragging to a friend. "Ballard. Can you believe it? We're moving in April." They didn't know the house had already been listed quietly, a deal almost done. George sat at a coffee shop, finalizing signatures with Mary Chen. "Buyers confirmed," she said. "All cash. Closing April 15th. He nodded. "Perfect timing." Outside, rain began to fall again, washing away every trace of mercy. By early April, the air smelled of wet earth and blooming trees. George loaded the last boxes into his car, just clothes, a few tools and essentials. Everything that mattered was already stored safely in Georgetown. At 9:30, a moving truck arrived. Emma drove, Mark followed behind, and in their backseat sat Mark's parents, faces glowing with excitement. "Dad, this is going to be so good for you," Emma said as she hugged him tightly. "You'll love Sunrise Meadows." Over her shoulder, George saw Mark's parents unloading boxes before he'd even left. "The house is in good hands," he said quietly. He didn't drive to Sunrise Meadows. Instead, he turned south toward Columbia City, to a small apartment he'd rented under a different name. It was plain but clean, just a temporary base. On the kitchen table sat a folder. Legal documents, contracts, timelines. Every date circled in red. April 15th. He unpacked, brewed coffee, and looked out the window at the skyline. Somewhere across the city, Mark's parents were hanging curtains in his old living room, claiming a house that wasn't theirs. He smiled faintly. 10 days left, he whispered. Then they'll learn what ownership really means. Back in Ballard, the fantasy unfolded. Mark hosted friends for drinks. "Yeah," he boasted. "Got the old man settled in a home. We're just keeping the place up." Emma nodded proudly. "He's happy there. Said it feels like a vacation." Meanwhile, Mark's parents started making renovation plans, arguing over paint colors and flooring. Porter, the father, visited the bank trying to open a home equity line. "We just need the deed," the loan officer said politely. "It's in transition," Porter replied confidently. "Paperwork's coming." But it wasn't coming. Never would. The house already belonged to someone else. George's days were calm, almost peaceful. He drank coffee, read the paper, and counted down the days. When April 15th arrived, he met Mary Chan and his lawyer, David, at the title company. The buyers, a young couple named Sarah and Michael, signed eagerly. "We've always dreamed of owning a craftsman," Sarah said, smiling. George nodded, signing the final page with steady hands. "You'll take good care of it," he said softly. The escrow officer handed him a folder. "All done. Funds wired." David placed an envelope beside it. "Eviction notice. Certified mail goes out today." George smiled. "Excellent." 2 mornings later, the letter arrived at the Ballard house. Mark signed for it without reading, tossing it on the counter. Later, as he poured coffee, he opened it casually and froze. His face drained of color. "Emma," he yelled. "Get in here." She came running. "What's wrong?" He handed her the paper. The words glared in bold. "Notice to vacate premises. Property sold April 15th, 2025. The buyer's names, the 30-day deadline, and at the bottom, George Mason, seller." "This has to be a mistake," Emma whispered. But Mark was already dialing. No answer. Not once. Not ever again. Panic spread like fire. Mark drove to Sunrise Meadows, stormed inside. "I need to see George Mason." The woman at the desk typed on her computer. "I'm sorry, sir, we have no resident by that name." "Check again," he snapped. He checked twice. "Sir, there's never been anyone by that name here." His voice cracked. "What?" The truth hit him like cold water. George had never lived there. He'd never left for a nursing home. He'd been orchestrating everything from somewhere they couldn't reach. Mark walked back to his car in stunned silence, the world spinning around him. The lawyer they hired gave them no comfort. "This residence agreement you drafted," he said, holding up the paper. "It means nothing. He was the sole owner. He had every right to sell. You can't fight it." "But we moved in," Emma pleaded. "We took care of him." "That doesn't matter," the lawyer said simply. "You have 30 days to leave." Porter slammed his hand on the table. "He tricked us." "No," the lawyer corrected. "You tricked yourselves." When they left the office, the sky had turned gray, drizzle beginning again, a fitting backdrop for collapse. Over the next month, their perfect plan fell apart. Porter and Lydia's apartment was long gone, rented to new tenants. They scrambled to find another, ending up in a smaller run-down place for nearly triple the price. Lydia took a cashier job at a grocery store. Porter searched for work but found none. Meanwhile, Emma and Mark drained their savings on moving costs and deposits. Their credit cards maxed out, arguments turned daily. "You ruined everything," Emma cried one night. "Me," Mark shouted. "Your father did this." But deep down they both knew, they'd done it to themselves. Weeks later, Emma sat alone at a cafe, writing her father an email. "Dad, I know you're angry. This was Mark's idea. I just went along. Please, can we talk? I never wanted to hurt you." She sent it, waited days, then got a reply. "Downtown cafe. Saturday, 2 p.m. When she arrived, George was already seated, calm and unreadable. "Dad, I'm sorry," she began, voice trembling. "We were wrong. We've lost everything." He let her speak until she had no words left. Then he said softly, "You didn't just plan to take my house, Emma. You planned to erase me." Tears filled her eyes. "Please, I'm still your daughter." He finished his coffee, placed a $5 bill on the table and stood. "You made your choice," he said simply. "And now you live with it." He left her sitting there, broken and speechless, staring at the untouched coffee between them. That summer, George moved into a new condo near the lake, a quiet place filled with sunlight and peace. From his balcony, he watched boats glide across the water, his heart steady and unburdened. The world had balanced itself. He hadn't taken revenge. He had only refused to be erased.